Okay, hi everybody. I'm back. Sorry for the interrupt because something wrong with the internet. So now we can continue with this. Um, we taught the start with the share already. So now we will write out the work vacation. Okay. So who can spell the vacation for me, please, Travis? Can you spell vacation?
Vacation.
T Okay, thank you very much, David. Thank you. So, because vacation, right? So, we will write out the vacation word in here. And you see the T, I turn up to the umbrella because you go to the beach, you sit under the umbrella so you stay out the sun, right? Sometimes too much sun. So, the T will be the umbrella. So, but we just start with the VACA first, okay? So, and you can use the color, different color for the word. You don't need to write only one color. So just like V, you can write down V like that. Okay, that's the V. Okay, and I will draw the different color for this just for fun. Vacation is fun, right? So more colorful is more fun. Okay, so A C. Let's see, purple vacation. Okay, A. And now we have the umbrella. The T will be the umbrella, right? So you can go straight like that. Okay. Line. And you can do like this. Just okay. Up there. And you see the umbrella, they have you can do different color with the umbrella, okay? So if easy for you, you can have one line here, one line here, okay, and one here, okay. And you can connect them like this, one line, one. Now you have the umbrella, right? It's easy, huh? Okay, so that's the T. Sure. Okay, now continue. You have the umbrella already, so let's see with the word I here. I use the other color just for fun. Okay. O I O. Okay. N. Okay. Okay. So now you have a vacation word with the umbrella here and some bird in here, right? Because when you go to the beach, you will see a lot of birds there, right? And with the bird, because they fly up on the sky a little bit fast, you cannot see very good shape. So you just write a V right here. So that's one bird. You can add one, two, three birds. It's up to you. Okay. Right here, we just try about two birds here, and maybe one more. Okay. So now you have a bird, the beach, the seashell, the work vacation, the umbrella. Okay, so now you just need to color that, okay? And you will have, and the ocean usually is blue, right? The sky blue, the ocean, the sky can be the light blue. This one can be the dark blue or even green if you want. And the sand, some sand is have a brown color, but some beach they have a white sand. Okay, just like the Thai tea or Something they have a white sand there, very special. Okay, so who finished your pitch and want to show your friend? You, Vicky, come on. Okay, you go this way, Vicky, so we don't, yeah, I don't want to speak. Okay, let's see. Wow, look at Vicky. She can even have some people running around in here already too. Nice work, Vicky. Very good. Okay, Felipe. So, you see that? Okay, very good job. Wow. Okay, and who next? Jack?
Jake, did you draw a picture?
Okay, come here, Jack. You have anything to do? Okay, let's say Jackie. Oh, Vicky, Katie. Oh, that's your Katie. That's nice. That's your picture. Good job. Then that's one. Okay. Oh,
We drew a little picture.
we have a little picture right here. Very good, Jack. Thank you, Jack. Okay, how about Travis?
Hi, Felipe.
He's a very good artist here. Wow, look at you. Whoa, very good. Look at everyone. Look at Travis work here. Good job, Travis. Now you just need to
job,
follow it.
Travis.
Okay, everybody, good job. Thank you so much. So everybody have fun, right?
Did you guys have fun?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. See you next time. And you know,
Yay.
next week, Lunar New Year. Okay, yay. So see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
What do we say? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful job. Thank you. Thank you, Tree.
You're welcome.
She's gonna read it. She goes on. Okay, Patricia, see you later. Okay, Grace. Hi, baby. This one is Grace.
Oh, what a nice vacation spot.
You're on vacation.
I know. Let's just pretend I'm there. How they do that on the that Wayne and Garfield? Doodaloo, doodaloo. Yeah. Hi, I'm here to read some more of The Trumpet of the Swan to you guys. I have really been enjoying it, and I hope you have been too so far. So if you remember, we're at summer camp now, where we not only are we at summer camp, but Lewis the trumpeter swan is there. So this chapter 13 is called End of Summer. So it begins, a trumpet has three little valves. And here's a picture of a trumpet. And these little things in the middle are the three valves. There are buttons on the top that you push down to get different sounds. They are for the fingers of the player. They look like this. By pushing them down in the right order, the player can produce all the notes of the musical scale. Lewis had often examined these three little valves on his horn, but he had never been able to use them. As you might recall, swans do not have fingers. He had three front toes on each foot, but being a water bird, he had webbed feet. The webbing prevented him from using his three toes independently. Like you can move your fingers like one at a time, his kind of all go together. So, luckily, the valve on the trumpet are not needed for the bugle calls that he was making, because bugle calls are just combinations of do, mi, and sol, and a trumpeter can play do, mi, and sol without pressing down on any of the valves, just by changing the way he's blowing into the trumpet. But if I could just work those three valves with my three toes, he said to himself, I could play all sorts of music. And I could play jazz, I could play country and western, why? I could play rock, I could play the great music of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Sibelius, Gershwin, Irving Berlin, Brahms, everybody. I could really be a trumpet player, not just a camp bugler. I might even get a job in an orchestra. The thought filled him with ambition. Louis loved music, and besides, he was already casting about for ways of making money after camp was over. Although he enjoyed his life at Camp Couscous, Louis often thought of his home on Upper Red Rock Lake in Montana. He thought about his parents, his brothers and sisters, and of course about Serena. He was terribly in love with Serena, and he often wondered what was happening to her. At night, he would look up at the stars and think about her. In the late evening, when the big bullfrogs were calling "Kronk" across the still lake, "Kronk," he would think of Serena. Sometimes he felt sad and lonely and homesick. His music, however, was a comfort to him. He loved the sound of his own trumpet. Summer passed all too quickly. On the last day of camp, Mr. Brickle called his counselors together and paid them what he owed them. Louis received his $100, the first money he had ever earned. He had no wallet and no pockets, so Mr. Brickle placed the money in a waterproof bag that had a drawstring. Oh, good, something else to hang around his neck, right? He hung his money bag around Louis's neck, along with the trumpet, the slate, the chalk pencil, and the life-saving medal. Remember, you got that life-saving medal? Nice. Louis went to Sam Beaver's tent and found Sam packing his things. Excuse me, Mike. I got a nose itch. I need another job, he wrote on the little slate and showed it to Sam. Where should I go? Sam sat down on his bed and thought for a while. Then he said, go to Boston. Maybe you could get a job with the Swan boat. Louis had never been to Boston, and he had no idea what the Swan boat was, but he nodded his head. Then on his slate he wrote, do me a favor? Sure, said Sam. Take a razor blade and split the web on my right foot so I can wiggle my toes. And then he held out his foot. So here, he's got his foot out and Sam's holding his foot. And he's still got stuff around his neck. Why do you want to wiggle your toes? Said Sam. Oh, you'll see, wrote Louis. I need my toes in my business. Sam hesitated. He then borrowed a razor blade from one of the older counselors. He made a big, long, neat cut between Louis's inner toe and middle toe. Then he made another cut between Louis's middle toe and outer toe. So he's not going to have web feet. Now he's going to be able to separate them. Does it hurt? No, Louis shook his head. He lifted his trumpet, placed his toes on the valves, and played do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, ra, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Oh! Sam grinned. The boat will hire you, all right. He said, you're a real trumpeter now. But with your web cut, isn't swimming going to be harder for you? You'll have a tendency to swim in circles because your left foot will push bigger than your right. Yeah, that's what happens when you got one foot that's stronger than the others. I'll be able to manage, wrote Louis. Thank you very much for the surgery. I guess their feet aren't very sensitive. Next day, the campers left. The canoes had been hoisted on the racks in the boathouse. The float had been hauled onto the beach. The windows of the lodge had been boarded up against beavers and squirrels. Mattresses had been packed into zipper bags. Everything was snug and ready for the long, silent winter. Of all the campers, only Louis stayed behind. His flight feathers were growing fast, but he still couldn't fly. He made up his mind that he would remain at camp all alone until he was able to take to the air again, and then he would fly straight to Boston. The lake was lonely without the boys, but Louis didn't mind being alone. For the next 3 weeks, he took life easy. He grew his flight feathers, dreamed of Serena by day and night, and practiced his trumpet. He had listened to music all summer long. Several of the boys had radios and record players, and now he practiced the songs on his trumpet. Every day he got better and better. One day he composed a love song for Serena and wrote the words and music on his slate. And the words are, "Oh, ever in the greening spring, by bank and bough retiring, for love shall I be sorrowing, and swans of my desiring." He was really thinking of Serena, but he left her name out of it and kept it impersonal. His plumage was beautiful now, and he felt great. His plumage is all his feathers are back for ready for the spring. I guess it's in the fall, because on the 21st of September, he tried his wings. To his great relief, they lifted him. Louis rose into the air. The trumpet banged against the slate, and the slate knocked against the money bag. The life-saving metal clinked against the chalk pencil, but Louis was airborne again. Clunk, clunk, clunk. He climbed and headed for Boston. Now, they were like in Montana, right? So that's a long way. If you don't know, because if you didn't see the last live stream when Jeremy was talking about Montana, it's that the north part, kind of in the middle of the United States. Boston is going to be way over on the East Coast. But it was wonderful to be in the sky again. Well, flying was a lot harder than it was before I got all these things, thought Louis. The best way I said wrong, but the best way to travel really is to travel light. On the other hand, I have to have these things. I've got to have the trumpet if I am to win Serena for my wife. I've got to carry this money bag to hold the money to pay my father's debts. And I've got to have the slate and pencil so I can communicate with people. And I ought to wear the medal because I really did save a life. And if I didn't wear it, people might think I was ungrateful. Well, that's nice of him. On and on he flew toward Boston, which is the capital of Massachusetts, and which is famous for its baked beans, its codfish, its tea parties, its cabots and its lowells, its sultan stalls, and its swan boats. Well, here he is flying high with all this stuff hanging off of him. So he's got a little ways to go. However, chapter 14 starts out Boston. So I'm thinking he got there. Louis liked Boston the minute he saw it from the sky. Far beneath him was a river. Near the river was a park. On the shore was a dock. And tied to the dock was a boat that's shaped like a swan. The place looked ideal. There was even a very fine hotel nearby. Louis circled twice, then glided down and splashed to a stop in the lake. Several ducks swam up to look him over. The park was called the Public Garden. Everybody in Boston knows about the Public Garden and goes there to sit on the benches in the sun, to stroll about, to feed the pigeons and the squirrels, and to ride the swan boat. A ride costs 25 cents for grown-ups, 15 cents for children. After a short rest and a bite to eat, Louis swam over to the dock and climbed out on the shore. The man who was taking tickets for the swan boat ride seemed surprised to see an enormous white swan wearing so many things around his neck. "Hello," said the boatman. Louis lifted his trumpet. "Ho-ho!" he replied. At the sound, every bird in the park looked up. The boatman jumped. Boston residents, as far as a mile away, looked up and said, "What's that?" Nobody in Boston had ever heard a trumpeter swan. The sound made a big impression. People eating a late breakfast at the Ritz Hotel on Arlington Street looked up from their food. Waiters and bellboys said, "What is that?" Now, I'm going to show you this little boat at the dock. There's the Swan boat, and there is Lewis. So it's a little bigger than Lewis, isn't it? But it's cool, and people take rides on it. Let's see, the man in charge of the Swan boat was probably the most surprised man in Boston. He examined Lewis's trumpet, his money bag, his life-saving medal, his slate, and his chalk pencil. Then he asked Lewis what he wanted. Lewis wrote on a slate, "Have trumpet, need work." "Okay," said the boatman, "you've got yourself a job. A boat leaves here in 5 minutes for a trip around the lake. Your job will be to swim in front of the boat, leading the way and blowing your horn." "What salary do I get?" asked Lewis on his slate. "We'll settle that later when we see how you make out," said the boatman. "This is just a tryout." Lewis nodded. He arranged his things neatly around his neck, entered the water quietly, took up a position a few yards in front of the boat, and waited. He wondered what would make the boat go. He couldn't see any outboard motor, and there were no oars. In the forward part of the boat were benches for the passengers. In the stern was a structure that was shaped like a swan. It was hollow inside. Inside was a seat like a bicycle seat, and there were two pedals inside, like the pedals of a bicycle. When the passengers were all aboard, a young man appeared. He climbed onto the stern of the boat and sat down on the seat inside the hollow swan-shaped structure and began to push the pedals with his feet, as though he were riding a bike. A paddle wheel began to turn. The boatman cast off the lines, and as the young man pedaled, the swan boat slowly moved out onto the lake. Lewis led the way, swimming with his left foot, holding his trumpet up with his right foot. "Ho-ho!" said Lewis's trumpet. The wild sound rang loud and clear and stirred everyone's blood. Then, realizing that he should play something appropriate, Lewis played a song he had heard the boys sing at camp. "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream." So the boat passengers were beside themselves with joy and excitement. A real live swan playing a trumpet. Life was a dream, all right. What a lark, what fun, what pleasure. "This is real groovy," cried a boy in the front seat. Sorry. Groovy? Remember that word, guys? "This bird is as good as Louis Armstrong, the famous trumpet player. So I'm going to call him Lewis." Good work, huh? Because that's his name. When Lewis heard this, he swam alongside the boat, took his chalk pencil in his mouth, and wrote, "That's actually my name." So here is Lewis out in front of the swan boat, and here's the swan boat, and he's making little trumpet noises and songs to please everyone. "Hey, how about that?" yelled the boy. "This swan can write, too. Lewis can write. Let's give him a cheer." The passengers cheered loudly. Lewis swam ahead again, leading the way. Slowly and gracefully, the boat circled the island while Lewis played "Gentle on My Mind" on his trumpet. It was a lovely September morning, hazy and warm. Trees were beginning to show their autumn colors. Lewis played "Old Man River." When the swan boat docked and the passengers got off, long lines of people were waiting to get aboard for the next ride. Business was booming because of him, right? Another boat was being made ready to accommodate the crowds. Oh, so they have another one. Everyone wanted to ride the swan boats behind a real live swan playing a trumpet. It was the biggest happening in Boston in a long time. People liked strange events and strange happenings, and the swan boat, with Lewis out in front leading the way, suddenly became the most popular attraction in Boston. "You're hired," said the boatman when Lewis climbed out onto the bank. With you playing the trumpet, I can double my business. I can, I can, I can sextuple people. So he's like sextuple. So make 6 times the amount of work. Anyway, I'll give you a steady job. Lewis lifted his slate. What salary? He asked. The boatman gazed around at the crowds waiting to get aboard. $100 a week, he said. I will pay you $100 every Saturday if you will swim ahead of the boats and play your horn. Is that a deal? Lewis nodded his head. The man seemed pleased but puzzled. If it isn't too much to ask, said the boatman, would you mind telling me why you're so interested in money? Everybody is, Lewis wrote on his slate. Yeah, I know, said the boatman. Everybody likes money. It's a crazy world, but I mean, why would a swan need money? You can get your meals just by dipping down and pulling up tasty plants at the bottom of the lake. What do you need money for? Lewis erased his slate and wrote again, I'm in debt. And he thought about his poor father who had stolen the trumpet, and about the poor storekeeper in Billings who had been robbed and whose store had been damaged. Lewis knew he must go on earning money until he could pay off what he owed. Okay, said the boatman. And then he said to the crowd, this swan says he's in debt. All aboard for the next ride. And he began selling tickets. The boatman owned several boats, all of them shaped like a swan. Pretty soon, every boat was full and money was flowing in. All day long, the swan boats circled the lake, carrying their load of happy people, many of them children. Lewis played his trumpet as he has never played before. He liked the job. He loved to entertain people, and he loved music. The boatman was just as pleased as he could be. When the day was over and the boats had made their last trip, the boatman walked over to Lewis, who was standing on shore arranging his things. You've done great, said the boatman. You're a good swan. I wish I had you a long time ago. And now, where are you planning to spend the night? Here on the lake, Lewis wrote. Well, I don't know about that, said the man. An awful lot of people are curious about you. They might make trouble for you. Bad boys might come up and bother you. I don't trust the people who hang around this park at night. You might get kidnapped. I don't want to lose you. I think I'll take you across to the Ritz Hotel, and I'll get you a room for the night. It's clean, and the food is good. It would be safer. Then I can be sure you'll come to work in the morning. Lois didn't really think much of this idea, but he agreed to go. He thought, well, I've never spent a night in a hotel, so maybe it would be an interesting experience. So he walked along with the boatman. They left the park and crossed Arlington Street and entered the lobby of the Ritz. It had been a long, tiring day for Lewis, but he felt relieved to know that he had a good job and that he could earn money in Boston as a musician. So here he is with the boatman going into the hotel for the night. You probably don't get too many swan customers there, huh? So the next chapter 15 is entitled A Night at the Ritz. And if you could see the expression on the person's desk at the front desk of the hotel, it doesn't look like he really wants a swan to be joining him there. When the desk clerk at the Ritz Hotel saw the boatman enter the lobby, followed by an enormous white swan with a black beak, the clerk didn't like it at all. The clerk was a carefully dressed man, very neat, his hair nicely combed. The boatman stepped boldly up to the desk. I'd like a single room for tonight for my friend here, said the boatman. And the clerk shook his head. No birds, he said. The Ritz doesn't take birds. Well, you take celebrities, don't you? Asked the boatman. Well, certainly we do, said the clerk. You'd take Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, wouldn't you, if they wanted to spend the night? Of course, replied the clerk. You'd take Queen Elizabeth, wouldn't you? Of course. Okay, said the boatman. My friend here is a celebrity. He's a famous musician. He created a sensation in the public garden this afternoon. You must have heard the commotion. He's a trumpeter swan and plays like the great Armstrong. The clerk gazed suspiciously at Lewis. Does he have any luggage? Asked the clerk. Luggage, said the boatman. Take a look at him. Look at the stuff he's got with him. Well, I don't know, said the clerk, staring at Lewis's possessions, his trumpet, his money bag, his slate, his chalk pencil, and his life-saving medal. A bird is a bird. How do I know he doesn't have lice? Birds often have lice. The Ritz will not take anybody that has lice. The birds get lice? I don't know. Lice? Roared the boatman. Did you ever see a cleaner guest in your whole life? Look at him. He's immaculate. At this, Lewis held the slate up to the clerk. No lice, he wrote. No lice on this bird. The clerk stared in amazement. He was beginning to weaken. Well, I have to be careful, he said to the boatman. You know, you say he's a celebrity. How do I know he's famous? You may just be kidding me about that. Just then, 3 young girls entered the lobby. They were giggling and squealing. One of them pointed to Lewis. There he is! There he is! I'll get his autograph! The girls rushed up to Lewis. The first girl held out a pad and a pencil. May I have your autograph? She asked. Lewis took the pencil. Very gracefully, he wrote Lewis on the pad. The girls were squealing and giggling, and they rushed away. The clerk watched all of this in silence. There, said the boatman. Is he a celebrity or isn't he? The clerk hesitated. He was beginning to think he would have to give Lewis a room. So here's the little girls getting the autograph. They're all excited. As we are when we meet someone famous, right? At this point, Lewis had an idea. He lifted his trumpet and began to play an old song called There's a Small Hotel. And it's got the little notes here. It says, there's a small hotel with a wishing well. His tone was beautiful. Guests passing through the lobby paused to listen. The clerk leaned his elbows on the desk and listened attentively. The man behind the newsstand looked up and listened. People sitting upstairs in the lounge put down their cocktails and listened. You see, everyone is looking down, and from wherever they're at, they're all staring at Lewis. For a few minutes, everything stopped in the lobby while Lewis played. He charmed everyone with everyone who could hear him. Chambermaids in the bedrooms paused their work to listen to the trumpet. It was a moment of sheer magic. As the song came to an end, people who knew the words sang them softly. When the steeple bell says good night, sleep well, we'll thank the small hotel together. Oh, isn't that cute? How about that? Asked the boatman, smiling at the clerk. Is this one a musician or isn't he? Well, he plays a sweet trumpet, the clerk said, but there's one more question that I hesitate to bring up. What about his personal habits? Will he mess the room all up? Actors are bad enough. Musicians are worse. Musicians have been known to trash some hotel rooms, right? I can't allow a large bird to occupy one of our beds. It might put us out of business. Other guests might complain. I'll sleep in the bathtub, Lewis wrote on his slate. Will not disturb the bed. The clerk shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Who's going to pay the bill? He asked. I am, said the boatman. I'll be here early tomorrow morning when Lewis checks out. Well, the clerk could not think of any more reasons for not letting the swan have a room. Very well, he said. Sign the register, please. He handed Lewis a pen and a card. Lewis wrote, Lewis the Swan, from Upper Red Rock Lake, Montana. The clerk looked at it. He seemed satisfied at last. He summoned a bellboy and handed him a key. Take this gentleman to his room, he ordered. Louis removed his medal, his trumpet, his slate, his chalk pencil, and his money bag and handed them to the bellboy. Together, they walked to the elevators. The boatmen said goodbye. Here they are, heading for the elevator. Louis doesn't even have to carry stuff now. Now he's a hotel customer. He's got a bellboy. Sleep well, Louis, called the boatman, and be ready to come to work promptly in the morning. Louis nodded. The elevator door opened. This way, sir, said the bellboy. They entered the elevator and waited for the door to close. A rich smell of perfume filled the air. Louis stood very still. Then he felt himself rising. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor, and the bellboy led Louis to a room, unlocked the door, and ushered him in. Here you are, sir, he said. Would you like a window open? The bellboy put Louis's luggage down and snapped on a few lights, opened a window, and laid the room key on the dresser. Then he waited. I guess he wants a tip, thought Louis. So he went into his money bag, loosening the drawstrings, and took out $1. Oh, it's a good thing the guy didn't give him 100, huh? He gave him small change. Thank you very much, sir, said the bellboy, taking the dollar. He went out and closed the door softly behind him. Louis was alone at last, alone in the room at the Ritz. Louis had never spent a night alone in a hotel. Probably not a lot of swans have, right? First, he walked around and around, switching lights on and off, looking at everything. In the writing desk, he found a few sheets of paper that had for writing letters that said Ritz, Carlton, Boston on it. He felt mussy and dirty, so he went into the bathroom, climbed into the tub, pulled the shower curtain across, and took a shower bath. Okay, now how did he know how to do this? It felt good, and it reminded him of the water fights he used to have with his brothers and sisters. He was careful not to splash any water out of the tub. And when he finished, he stood for a while, admiring the bath mat and preening his feathers, which means like making them all neat. Then he felt hungry. On the wall of the bedroom, he found a button that said, Waiter. Louis put his beak against the button and pressed hard. In a few minutes, there was a knock at the door, and a waiter entered. He was nicely dressed and tried not to show surprise at finding a swan in the room. May I get you something, he asked. Louis picked up his chalk pencil. 12 watercress sandwiches, please, he wrote. 12 watercress sandwiches? And the waiter thought for a moment. Are you expecting guests? He asked. Louis shook his head. And you want 12 watercress sandwiches? Very good, sir, said the waiter. Do you wish them with mayonnaise? Louis didn't know what mayonnaise tasted like, but he thought fast. He cleaned his slate and wrote 1 with, 11 without. The waiter bowed and left the room. Half an hour later, he was back. He rolled a little table into the room, placed a huge platter of watercress sandwiches on it, along with a plate, a knife, a fork, a spoon, salt and pepper, a glass of water, and a linen napkin, nicely folded. There was also a butter dish with several pieces of butter covered with cracked ice. The waiter arranged everything carefully, then handed Louis a bill to sign. The bill said 12 watercress sandwiches, $18. Goodness, thought Louis, this is an expensive place. I mean, it's sandwiches with weeds on it. Come on, you know. I hope the boatman won't be mad when he sees this supper charge on the bill tomorrow morning. He borrowed a pencil from the waiter and signed the bill. Louis the Swan. So here is the waiter with the plate of sandwiches. He's got a whole plate full of sandwiches there, see? Give me some. The waiter took the bill and stood there waiting. Oh, I guess he wants a tip, thought Louis. So he opened his money bag again, drew out $2 and handed it to the waiter, who thanked him, bowed again, and went away. Because a swan has such a long neck, the table was just the right height for Louis. So he didn't need a chair. He ate his supper standing up. He tried the sandwich that had mayonnaise on it and decided he didn't like mayonnaise. Then he carefully pulled each sandwich apart. All he really wanted was the watercress. That's what I figured. He piled the slices of bread in two neat piles, scooped the watercress onto his plate, and had a nice supper. He did not touch the butter. When he was thirsty, instead of drinking from the glass of water, he walked back into the bathroom, drew a basin full of cold water, it was like a sink, and drank that. Then he took his napkin, wiped his beak, and pushed the table out of the way. He felt much better. To be all alone in a hotel room gives a person a cozy feeling and a feeling of importance. Louis felt great, but soon he began feeling rather lonely too. He thought of Sam Beaver. He thought of Camp Couscous. He thought of his mother and father and sisters and brothers back home in Montana. He thought of Serena, the swan that he loved, and wondered how she was. The words of the song he had been playing in the lobby came back to him. There's a small hotel with a wishing well. I wish that we were there together. How wonderful it would be, he thought, if Serena could be here with him at the Ritz to enjoy the hotel with him. The waiter had left an evening paper on a table. Louis glanced at the front page. Remember, we were talking about newspapers the other day, right? To his amazement, he saw a picture of himself on the lake in the public garden with the swan boat. A big headline said, Boston goes wild over the trumpet of the swan. The news story began. There's a new bird in town. His name is Louis. He's a trumpeter swan that really plays the trumpet. Incredible though it may seem, this rare and beautiful water bird has accepted employment with the Swan Boat Management in the public garden and is entertaining boat riders with his smooth trumpet. Crowds gathered at the lake this afternoon after his arrival, and the sweet notes of his horn were heard in many parts of Boston. Oh, they like him there, huh? Louis read the article to the end and then tore it out of the paper. Sam Beaver ought to know about this, he thought. From the writing desk in his room, he took a pen and a sheet of paper. Remember, it said Ritz-Carlton, Boston on it. And this is what he wrote. Oh, he wrote a long letter. Dear Sam, I am spending the night at the Ritz in fashionable surroundings. You were right about Boston. It is very pleasant. I was able to find work as soon as I arrived. I am associated with the Swan Boat at a salary of $100 a week. You may be interested in the enclosed clipping from today's paper. If all goes well, I'll soon have enough money to pay my father's debt to the music store, and then I will own the trumpet free and clear, and will hope that blowing it passionately, I will be able to make a favorable impression on the young female I am in love with. Then everyone will be happy. My father's honor will be restored, the music shop and Billings will be repaid, and I can take a wife. I hope you are well. I miss you. A hotel room, even though it has every convenience, can be a lonely place. Your friend, Louis. Louis addressed an envelope to Sam, folded the letter, fitted the newspaper clipping in, and found a 6-cent stamp in his money bag. Well, that was a while ago, wasn't it? 6 cents. They're like 56 cents now. 50 some. He sealed the envelope, pasting the stamp on it, and dropped the letter in a mail chute outside the door of his room. Convenient. Now I'll go to sleep, he thought. He went to the bathroom and used the toilet. I don't want to know. Then drew a tub full of cold water in the bathtub. Well, but he's a swan, so he's used to that. He could not get Serena out of his mind. How wonderful it would be if only she were here. How, before settling down for the night, he picked up his trumpet and played the song that he had composed for her when he was in Ontario. Oh, oh, ever in the greening spring, by bank and bough retiring, for love shall I be sorrowing, and swans of mine desiring. He tried to play softly, but in a minute the phone rang in his room. Okay, he can't really be very soft on the trumpet. Lewis lifted the receiver and put it to his ear. I'm sorry, sir, the voice said, but I'll have to ask you not to make so much noise. The Ritz does not allow its guests to play brass instruments in the bedrooms. Lewis hung up the phone and put his trumpet away. Then he turned out the lights, climbed into the tub, curved his long neck around to the right, rested his head on his back, tucked his bill under his wing, and lay there, floating in the water, his head cradled softly in his feathers. Soon he was asleep, dreaming of little lakes in the north in the springtime, dreaming of Serena, his true love. So here he is in the tub, he's all curled up. Well, you can come up and see it if you want to. Do you want to see it? I'll show it to you in a little bit then. So he's having a nice little relaxing tub sleep. And then that would take us to another chapter, but since it's a little late, we'll be stopping now. So that's where we're at with the Trumpet of the Swan. He got his way to Boston. He's got a good job. Everything seems to be going well for him. So let's see what happens next time. So, do you want to?
Great.
Thank you. Too bad I can't do trumpet sounds, right? Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Look at that. Okay, we